On 5 News tonight, a controversial nuclear power station gets the green light. How we'll find out what the BBC's stars earn. And do you still text while you drive? The new Hinkley Point power plant will be built, but is it a good deal for the taxpayer? Star salaries. More BBC presenters will have their pay revealed as part of its new deal. And why, if you do this, you could be in trouble. Also tonight, we'll hear from the bereaved mothers who want our schools to do better. They say these 2 boys might still be alive if they'd been taught more about life's risks. And not stopping anytime soon, the 97-year-old who can teach us all a thing or two about staying fit. Good evening, welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. It is controversial, it is costly, and it's already caused concern for the Prime Minister. And today, the Hinkley Point C nuclear power plant, designed to power millions of homes for 6 decades, has been given the go-ahead. Theresa May delayed the deal 2 months ago, though, over concerns about French and Chinese investment. The government now says it's confident national security will not be put at risk. But, as our political editor Andy Bell explains now, critics argue it is still a bad deal for consumers.
It'll be the first nuclear power station in this country for a generation, supplying 7% of Britain's electricity. Hinkley C was all set until Theresa May froze it in her first week in power. But now it's back on again.
It was right that the new government should have taken the time to consider all components of the project. And now, having reviewed the project, the government is satisfied that the improved deal and the other changes announced today will, for the first time, remedy the weaknesses of the previous regime for foreign ownership of critical infrastructure.
What that means is that EDF, the French-owned company building Hinkley C, has agreed not to sell its stake there unless the government agrees. And the same rule will apply to future nuclear power stations. Security is an issue because China is putting up a third of the £18 billion needed. The opposition say what the government's announced today is just for show.
They risked a diplomatic dispute with one of our key future trading partners, and in the end, all they've done is pretend to give themselves powers which they already possessed. This statement is window dressing. It is face-saving by a government that talked big and eventually backed down with a whimper.
And there's been no change to the price guaranteed by the government for the electricity generated at Hinkley, which is over the current market rate. Greenpeace, who delivered a petition to Downing Street today, say that means consumers will in effect subsidise this project by about £30 billion at least.
EDF have failed to build this exact type of reactor 3 times already, in France, in Finland and in China. And in Finland, the reactor is 10 years overdue and 3 times over budget. So this is the price that consumers are being asked to put up now, but I don't think that's the end of it. I think the costs are going to keep going up and up.
The Chinese are hoping Hinkley C will open the way to building more nuclear power stations in the UK. And along with EDF, they've welcomed today's announcement. But privately, they may just be wondering why Theresa May made them wait.
And they've had to wait a long time. Was it worth it, Andy?
Well, cast your mind back to July when Theresa May became Prime Minister. It happened more quickly than people expected. There was no contest, and by coincidence, within days, the deal on Hinkley was supposed to be nodded through. Now, in those circumstances, perhaps it's not surprising that the new team said, hang on, this is incredibly expensive and controversial, maybe we should just have another look at it. So they paused it. But when they came to have a look at the deal, they realised that the implications of cancelling the agreement or of renegotiating it substantially so that there was a risk of it collapsing by itself, they realised that was simply too dangerous. So I think what has happened is they've looked at it, they've come back and they said it will go ahead, we have these extra changes, but frankly those changes look like they're really around the edge of this.
Thanks, Andy. Well, as we heard there in Andy's report, not everyone is happy about this new deal, and there are big questions over whether it provides good value for money for us taxpayers. Let's speak now to Alex Wild from the Taxpayers Alliance. Why aren't you happy, Alex?
Well, it's going to make electricity generated from nuclear power the most expensive electricity anywhere in the world. We're going to be paying about 35% more than people in the United States pay, about 25% more than people in France are paying. And the whole problem with this is the government's entire energy strategy is basically a gamble that fossil fuels are going to get much, much more expensive in the next 20 or so years. And this has been the same rationale for the past 20 years. We've seen lots of unconventional gas and oil come online, which has proved that this is just simply not the case.
Plenty of people think fossil fuels are dirty. They don't want shale gas. And the reason it's cheaper in France to have nuclear energy is because they've got no more nuclear power stations. It's cleaner, and it's going to cost us to do that.
It is cleaner, but it's also much, much more expensive. And there are three considerations that we should have with energy policy. There's security of supply, there's cost, and there is, what's the other one?
Environment.
The environment, exactly.
Some would say that's the most vital
But we're only
bit.
considering two of them. We're not considering the third one.
Do you think, though, in considering the environment and cost, other alternatives, wave power, wind power, should be given a break by the government? They should be encouraged more alongside this investment in Hinkley.
Well, we've got massive subsidies for renewables as well, and the problem with renewables is they're going to play a part in our energy mix, but it's the costs that they impose on the entire system. I mean, not just when the wind's not blowing and they're not creating any electricity. When the wind is blowing, there's electricity going into the grid, and we have to turn off things like gas capacity so we don't overload the grid. And then those people who own the assets, the gas power stations, have to be compensated for this with more subsidy. So the more we subsidise renewables, the more we have to subsidise everything else.
Just a final word, Alex, on who ends up footing the bill for this, because EDF, who are building this in large part, have tied themselves up in knots as to whether they think it's worth it, because if they go over budget, it could be disastrous for them and the French government.
Well, absolutely. There's an £18 billion construction cost, which is going to, with the burden of that is on them. But what we've seen with this model of reactor in places like Finland and France is that we don't really know if it's going to work. I mean, they've gone hugely over budget and hugely over time schedule over there. So if that happens again, then we're really going to be in trouble with capacity in the UK, and EDF's going to be in a huge amount of financial trouble. That's why the finance director resigned over this just a few months ago.
OK. Alex, thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Now, the medical records of some of Team GB's Olympic athletes have been leaked. Hackers stole files belonging to Sir Bradley Wiggins, Chris Froome and 3 others. There's no suggestion any of the athletes has broken the rules, though. Julian Drucker is in the newsroom. And Julian, the files were stolen from the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA. What details have emerged?
Yes, Matt, these are confidential details about some of our top sporting stars, 25 athletes, 5 of them from Team GB. The data was on the website of the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA. Now, Russian hackers are thought to be responsible for the breach, and we should say there's no any suspicion at all of any wrongdoing on behalf of those athletes involved. Now, Sir Bradley Wiggins is probably the most famous person on the list. The data relates to the use of TUEs, therapeutic use exemptions. That is when athletes are allowed to use otherwise banned substances because of a verified medical need. Sir Bradley uses one because he has asthma. Now, Chris Froome, that other prolific cyclist, uses a steroid for chest complaints. Now, both men have previously spoken about their ailments and talked about the medicines that they use. And one expert today has been telling us more about TUEs.
Indeed, many of those substances on the banned list are used genuinely for medical treatment purposes, but it will only be taken in very small dosages and for a very short period of time that relates to the length of time that an athlete has an injury or a problem for. So it's not a license to take that substance forever.
Julie, you mentioned the hack originated in Russia. It sounds like that could be significant.
Yes, these hackers are known as the Fancy Bears Group. They're Russian. There is a whiff of revenge about this. WADA says that this has taken place in retaliation for their report earlier this year into state-sponsored cheating. The hackers say that WADA are corrupt. They say that they've done this because TUEs, they say, are licenses for doping. Now, the Kremlin has denied any involvement in this, any link with the hackers, but it's hugely embarrassing for WADA that this breach has happened. The athletes themselves say that much of this information was already out there, but members of Team GB have been warned that their data could be breached next.
Julian, thanks a lot. 2 people reported to be a mother of 9 and her nephew have been shot dead in North London. The victims have been named locally as Annie and Burville Ekofo. They were killed at a house in East Finchley this morning. No one has yet been arrested. Burville's sister described him as a good guy.
he didn't deserve to die the way that he did. He did not. He was such a good person. He didn't deserve to die like that.
No trouble, nothing.
He didn't. He really didn't. Obviously, everybody has their faults. Everyone has maybe even a temper or something bad to say about someone, but he was such a good guy.
The mother and grandmother of 6-month-old Molly Mae Wotherspoon, who was mauled to death by a pet dog, have been jailed. Claire Riley and Susan Orcott admitted dangerous dogs charges over the attack by their American pit bull in Northamptonshire in October 2014. Now, stars of some of the BBC's most popular shows are to have their pay packets revealed as part of the corporation's new royal charter. It'll have to name every presenter who's on more than £150,000 a year, which could include the likes of Claudia Winkleman and Graham Norton. Ministers say it'll help ensure the licence fee is good value for money. Here's Simon Viger.
It's quite difficult driving a rocket.
They are some of the biggest names in television.
New managers, new signings, but apart from that, nothing much has really changed.
What is about to change is what we know about how much licence fee money they are paid.
Just a question.
Proposals for the BBC's new royal charter include a clause identifying anyone earning more than £150,000. That's a much lower threshold than before, when people weren't named. In Parliament today, there was this observation from the SNP's media spokesman, who used to be a presenter on BBC Breakfast.
If your agent is worth his salt, Mr. Speaker, sir, or her salt, they will know exactly how much you and all your competition are paid. I know this from bitter experience.
But the BBC worries it will act as a poacher's charter. In a statement, the Director General Lord Hall said the BBC operates in a competitive market and this will not make it easier for the BBC to retain the talent the public love. A battle the BBC has won is over independence of the new board. The majority of members will now not be government appointments. And on the money, well, there is a loophole.
If it's a co-production or it's an independent production, in other words, these people are not paid by the BBC. Think, for example, of all the presenters of Great British Bake Off, none of whom are paid by the BBC, but rather by Love Productions. There's no guarantee that that information will emerge in public. So you could easily end up with a two-tier BBC, the in-house bit where it's all disclosed, and the independent stroke co-production bit where it isn't.
Yes, the Great British Bake Off controversy is a reminder that the show is the thing. But behind the scenes, show business is a business. Simon Viger, 5 News.
Next, a group of bereaved mothers who lost their teenage sons are calling for a major shake-up in the way that schools teach children about life's risks. They want lessons in personal development, social issues and health, commonly known as PSHE classes, to be made mandatory because, they say, children just don't really get taught properly about issues like sex and drugs and alcohol. 2 of them are with me now. Lauren Le Fay founded the Breck Foundation after her 14-year-old son, Brett Bednar, was murdered by a 19-year-old who groomed him online. And with her is Fiona Spargo-Mabs, who founded a foundation in her son Daniel's name. He died after taking a lethal dose of MDMA when he was 16. Thank you both very much for coming in. Just tell us, Lauren, how this idea of forming an alliance with other mums came about.
Well, I think being so passionate about making sure children are safe and understand the risks that they will face throughout their teenage years, I was really pleased when I was able to get together with some other mothers who felt just as passionate and happened to have sadly lost their sons as well. So we really have a bond. We've been emailing and communicating, but today was the first day we got to meet, and I think we've had a great opportunity to raise awareness of the need for PSHE lessons in every school for every pupil.
How's it been meeting Fiona? Because we hear about your story separately. I've met Lauren before to talk about Breck, but it's not often that people cross paths like this when similar tragedies have happened to them.
No, it's been so good to meet Lauren and Sasha today. Sasha's unfortunately not able to be here this evening, but it's because our stories are so similar and what we're trying to do is so similar, and joining forces together, I think we can be a bit of a force to be reckoned with, and we are, as Lauren says, so passionate. But we do need, I think, to spend a day together so that we can just talk and not have to do all the things that we've been doing today.
You mentioned Sasha, who's involved in this and lost her son David to a brain tumour. I mean, quite different circumstances for the 3 boys. When did you light upon the idea that it's education, it's schooling that could have made their outcome so different?
Well, every pupil in general is at school. There's over 8 million pupils in school at any one time. Ofsted in 2013 said 40% of schools did not have PSHE lessons that were up to par. So that's still over 3 million pupils that need these lessons, and I think they're everyday life lessons that are so important for children to not only excel at school, but to excel in life. So it just felt so important for us to pull our stories together, because it's not just about one of these issues.
I mean, Fiona, Department for Education data shows secondary schools spend a third less time on PSHE than they did 4 years ago.
Yes.
Now, that's obviously not benefiting anybody, but do you think the reason is that they're focusing so much on results, or what do you think it is?
I think schools are under incredible pressure, and it's not that they don't care, and it's not that they're not aware of the importance of the well-being of their students, but there's such incredible pressure from all directions on results and on achievement. And we've just had the GCSE results a few weeks ago, and they're a bit down on what they were in the previous year, and that's going to increase pressure. So schools are forever having to be kind of creative about how they manage timetables.
And Lauren, this isn't just a case of educating boys like Breck about dangers. Surely it's about educating men like the 19-year-old who killed him. So if we say man, it wasn't long after being a boy himself, about the potential outcomes of their actions.
Absolutely. It's for really every child to have life lessons to keep themselves safe, to know how to keep their peers safe, and also to know what's right and wrong in behaviors. Consensual sex and abusive relationships, all of that plays into this.
But I'm guessing that you both talk to your boys about the dangers out there. I'm sure you talked about online dangers and the dangers of drugs and sexual matters. So where do you draw the line? Why should schools pick up so much of this responsibility?
It's a joint responsibility. It's teamwork, because the relationship a child has with their parents is different from the relationship a child has with their teachers, and the message is communicated in different ways, and it has to be parents and schools working together.
Absolutely.
Do you get a sense then, Lauren, just to finish off, that there could be a reaction to this in a positive way? There could be more of this kind of education in schools?
We are very optimistic. I think we're doing this. We're campaigning so hard together with the PSHE Association to make sure children stay safer. And it's not to put more pressure on teachers. It's really to just bring everyone together to make sure that children get these life lessons, because it will only benefit them in their studies, and it'll benefit them in life.
Lauren, Fiona, thank you both very much indeed for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Still to come on 5 News Tonight, more of the day's news, including, well, the celebrations just keep on coming after an astounding 24 hours, another one, at the Paralympics. And meet another inspirational athlete who is still breaking records at 97. He's running in here to see me after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News Tonight. It is the biggest road safety concern for motorists today, according to the RAC, the sight of other drivers brazenly using their handheld mobile phones. It is illegal, but almost a third of those the organisation spoke to admitted to doing it, with some even saying they texted or even taken pictures while at the wheel. Peter Lane has more.
Calling, texting, using apps and social media, more temptation to pick up the phone than ever, more drivers admitting that they do. Daryl Martin knows the cost. His brother Lee was out cycling when he was killed by a driver texting at the wheel. This is the last photo Daryl took of Lee just a few weeks earlier.
My brother's not going to come back, but I don't want someone else to be in my position. Or my sister-in-law's position, or my niece's position, my mum's position, my dad's position, my brother, or my kids, It's horrendous. Someone's just gone from my life, just like that.
The man who killed Lee, Christopher Gard, was jailed but had been caught using his phone at the wheel 8 times before and never lost his licence. Lee's family want the law toughened up.
And at each stage he could have been prevented if there had been harsher penalties at that point. If it had been 6 points, 9 points, or a ban even for using your phone, then he would have stopped. I would be talking to you, my brother would be alive.
Almost a third of drivers, 31%, admit using a handheld phone. a sharp rise from 8% in 2014. 19% of drivers confessed to sending a message or posting on social media, and 14% even owned up to taking photos or videos. The government's due to unveil a crackdown soon, with the minimum fine expected to rise from £100 to £150, and penalty points set to increase from 3 to 4. Is that a strong enough deterrent? What can change driver behaviour?
There is a significant problem with people simply thinking that they can do it and get away with it. So enforcement is a problem, but also a high-profile awareness campaign, a public campaign by the government, by authorities, to advertise just how dangerous it can be, and that can raise awareness and can help stop the problem.
It's a cultural change that needs to happen, not just a purely legal one. You never get over it. There's the hole in our life, in our family life, his lack of being is haunting, you know.
The families hope that stories like Lee's will make drivers think. Peter Lane, 5 News.
The Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump, is said to be in excellent physical health, according to a doctor's letter made public by his campaign. The 70-year-old is classed as overweight and he takes statins and a low dose of aspirin. It says he doesn't use tobacco products or drink alcohol. His rival Hillary Clinton is set to return to campaigning shortly after she became ill with pneumonia. A number of British tourists have been caught up in an explosion on a boat on the Indonesian island of Bali. Reports say that 2 people, including a German, were killed, while 14 others were injured. The explosion is believed to have been caused by a faulty fuel tank. And John Lewis has announced a fall in profits. In the last 6 months, it made just under £82 million. That's a drop of 15%. Its bosses say it's because of higher staff pay and a more competitive market. The athletes say there is a brilliant buzz around Britain's Paralympic camp right now, and you can really understand why. This afternoon in Rio has brought another glut of gold, taking them to their highest total for 28 years. And here is that ever more impressive medal table. Britain in second with an incredible 47 golds. The overall tally now surging past 100. It's incredible. Here's Minnie Stevenson on another spectacular day.
A winning streak for Paralympics GB, with 9 gold medals on day 7. In fact, no other British team has done that well at a Paralympics since 1988. And one of those medals was cyclist Dame Sarah Storey, bringing home yet another gold. Takes it! And in the 100 metres breaststroke, Paralympics GB hogged all the medals, with Aaron Moores winning gold and Scott Quinn coming second with silver. Moores even showed Rio how to celebrate. And the smile on Hannah Cockcroft's face said it all when she won the 400 metres for athletics. In dressage, Sophie Wells' dream was to get gold, and she did just that.
Jeanette Chippington has the gold by the narrowest of margins.
As day 8 got underway, Jeanette Chippington made history, becoming our first ever para-canoeing champion.
Gold for Great Britain!
Then taking the medal tally up to 100, Anne Dickens in record time got gold.
But Emma Wiggs, well, she could have turned and celebrated so far back in that race.
And no one could stop 5-time world champion Emma Wiggs winning the 200 metres para-canoeing sprints.
Because she has a Paralympic gold medal.
In dressage, emotions were running high as Natasha Baker won her 3rd gold at a Paralympic Games. Euphoric scenes as Paralympics GB continues to break records and their opponents' hearts in Rio. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Now, while we're on the subject of people doing extraordinary and inspirational things, have a look at this.
Set.
This is Dr. Charles Eustace setting a new age group world record in the indoor 200 metres, that age group being the over 95s. He is in fact 97 and is an award-winning athlete who trains 3 times a week and holds multiple sprinting records. And he is going for another this weekend at the British Athletics Championships. I'm delighted to say he's stopped running to join me in the studio now. Charles, lovely to see you. You're enjoying watching that, aren't you?
Well,
When I was running, I felt as if I was running like a young deer, and when I look at it, it looks like a sort of slow motion shuffle.
To be honest, you're running better than a lot of young deers could run.
Oh, come on!
Here you are.
I mean, come on.
This is you going for the win. Well, look, I know the reason you're criticising yourself there is because you told me that one of the motivations for getting into exercise at your tender age is vanity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And well, I must go back a little bit. The most important decisions that one has to make is approximately between the age of about 60 65. And then you have to determine whether you want to go into retirement or not. And the other thing is, in my personal opinion, one of the most important things is to determine what type of exercise or sport that you would like to do.
So you weren't always sporty then, as a younger man?
No. Previous to that, I was a balding, self-satisfied lump of lard.
But not now. So it was vanity that drove you on.
Yes.
How did you then get into the running?
What happened was, at the age of 63, I started rowing. But as in all sports, there's a danger of injury. And I began to have heart arrhythmias, fortunately not requiring any treatment, and trouble with my back. And so I stopped and thought that I must do something new. And at the age of 95, I decided to do something completely new, and that was the sprinting. But the important thing that happened to me was I was rowing 6 days a week, but nevertheless, my body was deteriorating.
But I think it looks like you've set it in decline. Just very, very quickly, Charles, what is the record you're going for next?
What I would like to do is the indoor 60 meters.
I think you're going to do it because it's a lot shorter than 200, and we just saw how you smashed that world record. Yeah. Charles, I'm afraid we're out of time. We could do with a lot more to talk to you, but we're out of it for now. Thank you so much for coming in, and best of luck bringing that world record. I know you live in Switzerland, but really, you're one of ours. Very proud of you. And look, finally, motorists and pedestrians in southeast China have had to dodge a flyaway moon. I'm not kidding. The large inflatable balloon came loose during a typhoon in the city of Fuzhou during a mid-autumn festival that celebrates the moon. Footage shows it rolling down the street over cars and towards people. We're told that no one was hurt, luckily. That's it from us. Sean's here next with the weather. Bye for now.